All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I do have Brett on with me. Hopefully, if he wants to chime in, feel free. We might have others kind of join as we go along, but this is kind of my first experiment of just doing some live coding and showing off Amplify a little bit. So I don't know where this is gonna head, but my goal is to kind of cover how to like get Next.js stood up and probably use Tailwind. So we're actually using that on Coding Cat right now. And I figured after going through it all and having all these fun kind of setups that we have, we're actually using Firebase on the back end currently. But I want to go through, possibly setting up similar setup with Amplify. So we'll see how this goes. And, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to throw it in the chat. I see Brittany out there. I'll throw her "oh hey" out there. Awesome. Cool. So here we go. Let's see how far we can get with this. So I'm going to pop open a terminal and I'll probably have to zoom in to one of my sections because I've discovered on 4K monitor this gets a little rough for streaming. So let's try this out. The first thing I'm going to do up here, maybe. So if you haven't used Amplify before, all you have to do is install the Amplify CLI. And then once you have that, you can start a new project with it. So I often end up for a brand new project actually not starting with Amplify, but usually starting with a different project first, because Amplify tends to look at kind of what your directory structure looks like. So if it's a TypeScript, like a React project or something like that, it understands the source folder and different things. So where we are going to head to is over to Next.js. So I'm going to pop open Next.js. And we'll see the getting started docs, I think, are in here. Maybe that'll take too long. This is the command I really want. So we're going to do this npx create next app to get started. So I'm going to cd into my downloads because I don't really plan on keeping this after we get done. Excuse me. Let's name this Amplify example. Pretty awesome. Okay, so this is actually creating our Next.js app. I'm gonna pop this open once it finishes up with the yarn install here. So if you've never used this, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen again. There we go. So the command I ran was npx create next app. And if we look at this folder, we can see in here, looks like we have another joiner here. Got John G in the house. Gonna throw him into the chat. Hello, John. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to jump in. So right now I'm just kind of looking at our Amplify example that we have out here. Bring this up a little bit, check out our structure. So I'm gonna pop this open in VS Code. So here's kind of what we're presented with currently. And this should all fully function at this point. And if I pop open a terminal real quick, we should be able to do npm run start or run dev, sorry. And I have way too many screens and windows open, but here it is. So here's the Next.js starter application that was just created. And for those of you who haven't used Next before, essentially all this has is this index.js file. I really like using TypeScript, and we're using TypeScript on CodingCat Dev. I probably won't go that far today. We'll just leave it as a JS file. We will be doing a course eventually with a full. We'll probably do a Firebase and an Amplify course on how to build CodingCat from top to bottom. So stay tuned for that. So the next part, now that we have that and we have kind of a structure going, what I'm going to do, and let me know if you have a difficult time seeing kind of some of these console things, but I'm going to fire that amplify init command. So here's our amplify example. Sure, why not? Dev environment, Visual Studio Code. So this might get a little confusing. You're thinking like, I'm in a Next project. Why is it saying React? Well, Next is kind of React, although you could do different things with Next. We're going to pick that. So let's just double check here. Since it doesn't technically have a source directory, this becomes a little interesting to me. Anyone have thoughts on this? This is just going to be where the actual Amplify little config ends up. I think I will just create it in a directory of source for now. We'll see what that happens. So just as a comparison, what we usually have, or what we do have out here. Bear with me one second here. I have too many folders open today. Okay, never mind. We're not gonna worry about that. So distribution directory path. Technically, we don't have a build that will get created. We actually will end up with this in .next. So we'll just pick .next and see how that goes. We might have to correct that too. It's been a little while since I did that. Yep, that sounds good. Start sounds good. All right, so at this point, if you haven't worked with Amplify before and you haven't logged into AWS profile, your profile, I do have a little bit of a guide out on CodingCat for this, but you're going to want to double check that you essentially have Amplify installed and that you have this configuration created. You'll actually find this configuration if you go to terminal. It should be in your root directory, so .aws. You should have some credentials in here. I'm not going to show that because that would be painful to go reset it all for me. But that is where that is located if you're having issues. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to blank out the screen just for a second here because I have some other projects that I can't show off too much. Okay, now we're back. So at this point, what it's actually doing is it's creating a new project out in the Amplify area out in the cloud on AWS. So if I pop open AWS, so here I'm sitting in the management console, and where you can find Amplify at is right under Amplify here. And this is our Amplify example that we have rolling out, which is pretty sweet. So at this point, we don't really have anything in our front end. So there's no repos that we're connected to or anything like that. I would always recommend getting a full CI/CD pipeline going with that. here is the dev environment that we initialized over in the CLI during that time. If we take a peek at it, it should be pretty much empty at this point. So it's got creation complete, and that's the most. So that's the whole thing. So at this point, what we're going to do is just kind of play with Amplify's kind of getting started tutorial on Next.js. So let's go look that up. Now, if you haven't heard about the Amplify admin UI, definitely check that out. It's a new feature that a lot of this like CLI and setup work is done for you. I'd highly recommend it. We just had a video on for it the other day. Check it out in the channel. Okay, so I think we're moving along here. We actually have a lot of this already done. We have Amplify all set up. Again, go out to this repo or go out to this documentation page, and it'll walk you through a lot more of what we just did. The next part that we're going to do is add an API to it. And this is totally off the cuff. So Brett, John, if you want to jump in and correct anything, or anybody online wants to comment in that they'd like to see it done a different way, just let me know. So we're going to do Amplify Add API. Just one sec. I'm going to send a quick message out here. Cool. All right. So we are going to select GraphQL, and the only reason I'm choosing GraphQL over anything else is because of the fact that, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. Let me do this. The only reason that I'm choosing GraphQL over REST is that there's a lot of parts to real time that's going to come out of the GraphQL side, and as you build out your app, you're going to find, especially if you're coming from Firebase, with that real-time update, the REST side of it, you'll have to start pinging or set up a WebSocket, and the GraphQL has built-in capabilities for subscriptions. So that's why I'd recommend going down that road. I'd also recommend it because it creates types for you, so you don't have to worry about doing anything on the TypeScript side to get going. So I'm just going to take that same API name, Amplify example. For now, we're just going to use an API key. If we don't run out of time too much, we can dive into Cognito a little further, and I can show you how we'll use user authentication as well as an API key when we do this. So do we need a description? Not really. We'll do the same Amplify example. Just bump this up in case someone comes along and wants to use it. No, we're just going to leave that alone. No, I don't have one. Would I like one? Yes. So one of the things that we're going to do is this blog's posts and comments, because it's very similar to what we're using on CodingCat. CodingCat is just a larger version of a blog post with some learning capability built into it. So let me throw that on. Sure, let's take a look at this. Okay, so as this pops open, of course it did it in a different screen. Let's get this back to normal. So as you dig through Amplify here, what you're going to find is everything that we need to look at is in the backend folders. So that is the entire Amplify. So often what I recommend, and what we have on CodingCat as well, is to set this up so that you have a backend folder, and You might have multiple front ends. We actually have CodeandCAD set up using Lerna, which is a mono repo setup. I would probably highly suggest that if you think you're going to grow anywhere beyond just a simple one-page app, but this should get you far enough. So let's go ahead and just keep going for now, not do that cleanup. So Amplify backend, what we just created was this API layer, okay? And what we're going to look at in here is the schema that it created. And there's some other files in here. And I know this is the part that frustrates some people, is that Amplify is hiding things from you. Yeah, I get it. Like, it's not as declarative as maybe it could be, but what it is powerful is that it's doing a lot for you. So if you're brand new to development, and I think this is what Amplify is really shooting for, is to get you up and running as quickly as possible so you don't have to think about these things. So the only file that you really ever have to focus on if you just want to get up and running quickly is this schema.graphql. Now, as I say that, there's going to be things that appear in this build folder that do a ton of different updates for your app sync side of things. So this simple GraphQL model will end up creating a ton of resolvers and pipeline. I don't know if this one creates pipelines, but as you start to build more and more through your schema, you'll see a lot more come out in this build folder. Some of the other folders in here, stacks are a way to expand further than Amplify, or in addition to Amplify. And what else it's going to do is allow you to create your own resources. So you have the full power of CloudFormation. And if you haven't used CloudFormation before, that's just a tool that is essentially the language to create all of your resources out on AWS's cloud infrastructure. So you could create databases, you could create anything you can think of that AWS can run. That's how you do it. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit further here, back to the schema. So at this point, I want to deploy this API, and this is probably one of the, I don't know if I should call it pain points, but one of the slower points in developing with Amplify, because it does so much under the hood with app sync and deploying. This can be a little bit slow. So as we do this, we might want to, I'm completely unscripted, which is very unusual for me. So at this time, Brett, John, anyone online, if you have questions, just feel free to reach out. And nice, GraphQL++. Yeah, feel free to ping me on the chats in either Twitch or YouTube, and we'll get some of those answers for you. So often, I'll walk through this the first time, but usually when I do Amplify push, I do a --y, and it skips all of these prompts, but we'll walk through it this first time. So it's asking if you want to generate the code, and we'll look at the code once it gets completed, because that's what we can use inside the application as well. So for now, JavaScript. So again, this is going to push this out to this source file. I think that's okay for now. That's not exactly how I would probably set it up in the future, but yep, go ahead and update everything. 2 deep's fine. Okay. And so now we're actually in the phase where it's doing the updates in the cloud. And this could get a little confusing for those just getting started with using Amplify AWS Amplify, sorry. And so what I'm going to do is jump over to this other screen. Really quickly. Sorry, I'm going to turn some notifications off here. Okay, so when we're over here, what it's showing over there is actually CloudFormation doing its work. So if we jump back into dev here and just refresh, you'll see that things are happening right now. And these are CloudFormation activities. And what I want to do is jump out and just show you CloudFormation if you've never been in here before. So you'll see all of these different creates occurring at this time. So the cool part here is all of this you would normally have to be doing manually if you didn't have CloudFormation. And that's the part that, it can be a little painful to get through, but it's actually setting up AppSync. It's setting up DynamoDB tables, and we'll walk through that too. But I just wanted to show you how to quickly get over to this. And if you ever want to just drop the nested view down, it'll show you kind of the main update that we're looking at right now. So if I go to resources, you can see right here all the stuff that it's doing. So there's this auth role, deployment bucket, and then the main Amplify example that's sitting out here. And if I open that up, so here's actually the way you can start to look at the blog. Here's comments, here's all of this stuff it's doing. Now, Amplify tries to simplify this side of it. So if I come all the way back out of that and get back into the actually Amplify environment, what's really nice, I wasn't even paying attention. Here's the admin UI, by the way. Definitely check that out. It makes a lot of this easier to get up and running. Yeah, so as we're looking through this, if you look through authentication, we don't have anything yet. But if we go to our API, if it actually is done, yep. So some of it, yeah, I think it's almost all complete now. It looks like it. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through everything that just created in Amplify, so you kind of understand what we're looking at up there. So let's jump into our blog table, our comment table, and our post table. I find that, so I'm on a new Mac Mini M1. I find that Chrome outside of Edge is amazingly faster now. I don't know what's up with Edge still. So maybe this wasn't quite completed yet, but let's take a look at this one. All right, so here are all the tables that were just created. Some of these don't pay attention to. They're for some other video on demand stuff that I was looking at. But if you look at all the ones with FKU, so these are the 3 tables that were created just now. And if we jump back into our Amplify console, and we can see here how it has our GraphQL API. We're also going to jump out to AppSync to see how those tables are utilized. And if you're wondering where this FKU GRU is coming from, if you go into Amplify, and I apologize, I'm kind of jumping all over the place. If you go out to your app settings, you can usually find that number if I'm in the right environment. It's been a minute since I looked for that number. Maybe it's not in the same place. Well, anyways, I'll find that in a little bit. So for now, we're jumping out into AppSync. So here is the AppSync console. Hopefully you can see this okay. It looks like it. And out here, the schema that we had set up, you'll remember, let me jump over to it just so you can look at it again. This is our simple GraphQL schema. And a lot of times people get confused because they think this is going to match identically what's over here. And for the most part, it will. But if you start to break down the typings and everything, there's a lot more there. So that simple GraphQL model, that schema GraphQL that we wrote ends up being all of this. And you're like, where did that come from? That can be definitely frustrating. So again, if you look in this builds folder, all of this ends up into this build folder, and that's where you'll see that matching GraphQL schema. So hopefully that solves some of that mystery for everyone. And then when we're looking at the data sources that we created, there's actually these 3 different tables here. So you have blog table, comment table, and post table. That's what's driving back to Dynamo at this point too. Okay, so that was very long-winded, probably. Got some awesome comments. Need to make your text larger because the vid quality makes the text pixelated. Okay. That's pretty big already. Anyone else having issues seeing this? Let me know. Strain my eyes. Hopefully that's a little better for everyone. Let me know if it's not for some reason. Okay. So, all right, where did I leave off? At this point, what we can start to do is start to utilize that GraphQL API. So again, I have not done this on a Next.js project, and it's going to be a little interesting to figure this out. So our GraphQL API key down here, we're going to want to utilize that in a call. So let's go ahead and check out our source folder. So the source folder that was created by Amplify, we actually have all of this configuration that we can utilize, and also these different GraphQL endpoints. So it's got mutations that we can call out to, and queries, and subscriptions. And these subscriptions are kind of what I was talking about before. When you're utilizing these subscriptions where it has like on create blog, on update blog, these are basically, I think WebSockets, I haven't dove too far into the tech on the back end, but when you start to use these, I think it establishes a WebSocket connection specific to like an ID that you provide. So if you're wanting to say like every time a post is created, alert someone on the front end, you can totally do that. Okay, voice guy. Cool. I'm glad that's a little better. I'll have to work on that on future videos. Thank you, voice tech guy. All right. So at this point, what we're going to do is kind of basically trash our index.js page. So if you remember, let's bring that up over here. Pop that open again. So here's our Next.js page. If we want to just take and essentially kill this page, so now we're at a blank sheet, and I'll put a hello world in there for now. All right, so we've got hello world, and it's styled with just the standard stuff that came with Next.js. Okay, so we're at the point where we need to start integrating our service directly into Next.js. I haven't done this, so let's go out to the documentation. And again, just playing this as a total newbie. I'm looking through the docs. We've got the git commits. Let's see. So it's talking about dynamic routes and how to use our router here. I guess it doesn't get too much into the APIs, it doesn't look like, unless I'm missing something here. So let's see. We've got add hosting, we've got publish. I don't believe so. So I think for that, what we're going to have to go back to is kind of somewhat of the API guides out here. Where am I at? Maybe it's in getting started. Here we go. Okay, I think we're getting there. So we did the Amplify Add Api. Let's see. We've got the schema, deploy. We did the push already. Generate code. Yep. All that's good. Okay. So this is probably the first part that we can go through and work on. Let's see. We've got so they're doing the to-dos, but we can probably steal most of this code. Oh, we're going to have to do one install here. I keep forgetting about. So I will jump back over on this side. Let's do npm install. I think they're using yarn lock, but whatever. What am I missing here? Just checking to make sure the package is good. Oh, right. Sorry. It's not with the at AWS. Okay. I think it's /API too. Okay. Good to know. So we'll let that install a minute here, and then let me take a look at what else they have in the docs. So while we're doing that, I'll pop over here. I'm guessing voice tech guy, you might want to let me know. See if this is clear enough. Okay, so we're all done npm installing, and what we're gonna do now is to check out this configuration. So at this point, we should be able to basically take everything that they have here. Let's see, create to do. So they're actually going through the to do tutorial. We can basically use that same thing. So let me jump to the right. I'm going to just drop a lot of what they have on their configs here. There's our GraphQL stuff. AWS config. That is probably not going to work because, yep, we got to locate that one. So let's go out of our pages, into source, and AWS exports. Cool. Let's see. So this is actually in here, and it has import create to do from GraphQL mutations. If I was using TypeScript, I'd adjust all these file path nasty things, but instead, let's bounce up a little bit. Again, back to source, GraphQL. And then what we can do is jump into mutations. And in our mutations, let's just jump in there a second. This is where we're going to get that nice create blog, so we don't have to worry about like creating that whole thing ourselves. Amplify already took care of it for us. So then we will do the AWS Amplify configure rather with the AWS config, which we pulled in from Amplify created that automatically for us, which is awesome. I'm sure if anyone's watching that's a decent hacker, they're probably blowing up my AWS API account already, but that's okay. Let's see here. So the cool part here is that we can just copy what they have out here. And we'll put that inside of this default function. We can create a new function called create new to do, but instead we're going to create new post, or maybe it should be new blog. Let's see here. Oh, I called that the wrong thing too. So let's copy that and do create blog and then create new blog. Cool. So now that we've got that there, let's just take a quick look at what create blog takes in. So on a GraphQL command like this on the input, you'll see this $ input, $ condition that comes in through it. That can get confusing. All that is like a variable essentially in GraphQL, and it's saying it needs this input and it's of type create blog input. So if we, I don't know why I can't click, but let's search it real quick. It doesn't give an input type in here. I'm used to TypeScript giving all those different types in there. So maybe that won't work. We'll see how this goes. Either way. So we've got a name and a description. Sure, let's just leave those. Let's just double check real quick. That's what matches over here. We've got name, no description, unfortunately. So let's just do name for now. See what happens. Cool. All right. So the next part of that, so we're essentially returning this API GraphQL back out when we call that. Let's create a couple buttons and or a button and a result is the example that they have for the to-do list. So let's take a look at that. Looks like Jason bounced down and off. I apologize if I missed you, Jason. So we've got a mutation button now. Let's see here, document.get by ID. I'm not sure in the example if they actually put any of the HTML, which is interesting. Let's take a look. I'll flip over there with, you can follow with me. I don't know that they do. That is interesting. So we'll just hook this up ourselves. So instead of hello world, we'll do, actually, I don't know why I'm doing any of this. Let's just do this. We'll do it more of a React way. Or maybe we won't. We'll do this. All right. Station button. Nope. There we go. So we've got our event button, and from our event button, we're basically saying, okay, link up with that and then add the event listener for click. And when that happens, create, in this case, a new to-do, which we'll have to change to new blog. And then let's see what else is changing here. So they're going to do this result. This could get really interesting since we're not making a to-do app. We'll see how this goes. So setting inner HTML, are we adding to it? I don't know. Doesn't look like it. Plus equals, they are adding to it. Okay. So I think that should get us pretty decently up and running. We've still got Node. Oops, I apologize. I did that whole thing off screen. So let me go back through that. What I did, I added a button over here with a mutation event button. I also added mutation result, which is just another div with that ID. These constants are both used up here. And then let's, Next.js is still running. So let's pop over to our left and take a look. Sweet. Don't know if all of this, so I'm still learning React. I don't know if all of that has to move or not. I think instead of trying to attempt to do this way, I'm going to do it the way that I would normally do a click, and we'll see how this ends up instead. So I usually do on click and then set this equal, oops, and do create. So the interesting part about this, we're just going to do, instead of create new blog, we're actually going to do a similar thing here, but we'll append it to something that we have in state instead. And that way we can add to it. So let's define a few more things as we get going here. Up at the top, I am going to put, at the top, we'll put a new state. New state. I'm just going to call this our blog. Set blog. And we'll just do that for now. So because this is actually setting some inner HTML and stuff like that, what I'm going to do is wipe that out. We'll do the create new blog. So we've got return await. And instead of doing this return await, we'll just wipe that off. We'll actually wait for it to come back within there. And then we will take the results of that and set it to, I believe it's going to be const, let's call this data. And then we should be able to steal this now. Set blog, that, but we also want to concatenate to it. So let's do this instead. Let's do the same thing. So we'll grab our current state. We'll do plus equals that. Actually, we probably won't do, yeah. So do that, and then we'll set it like that. All right, so essentially we took and flipped that function around just to something I'm a little more familiar with. Maybe there's a better way to do this in React. I'm not a React expert, unfortunately, yet. Um, we've got create new blog. We've got the call out there. We're going to actually make the call to create blog. Sorry, create new blog. Boy, I missed TypeScript. All right. We're going to import use state. Just bring in state from React so that we can use it. So let's see if this actually adds anything. It does look like it added a new button. So right now we have a new button. If I do an inspect on this, we should basically only have the new button and, oops, and then this mutation result. So let's see if I click that, if it actually does something. Boom, create to do is not defined. Awesome. So let's figure out what's going on there. If we go back over to the right, what we have here from our copied GraphQL. So we're saying API GraphQL, go ahead and run this GraphQL operation called create to do. Well, we don't have a create to do operation. We have a create blog operation. So we're going to copy that. And this is going to fail too because we don't have a description. So let's try just that and see if that works. Jump back over, create blog. Right, I knew that was going to happen. So I think what we're going to do is just use this string every time something new comes in instead. So let's flip back over here. I'm going to purge everything that we had. I'm going to actually put in this, remove this event because it's actually data now. And then before this, let's do a blog over here. That should theoretically have 2 paragraphs in it if we click this twice. All right, let's give that another try. I'm not getting any better. Cannot read property name of undefined. So let's set a breakpoint. I'm going to pop this out so hopefully everyone out there can see this better. This could be rough. Okay, let's see if you guys can see that. Okay. So we're actually going to come in here and you can do Command P. I believe it's Control P on Windows. You're using a string in the original use state call. Sorry, I'm a little behind on you guys. I really appreciate the comments. You're calling mutation. These two call create blog, not create to do. Thank you, voice tech guy. Thank you, Brittany. Really appreciate it. Okay, so what do we have next? We are going to do, yeah, we're debugging the index. And might not be the correct index. There we go. So if you're debugging Next.js, it's always going to use it's bundling this up essentially. They have Webpack under the hood, and what we can do is see the actual code right here, and it's complaining about this right here. So I just want to see if I could set a breakpoint in here. And sometimes I don't know why, but on Chrome it does this sort of look. Often, if you refresh. Um, You'll probably get a new index file or a number often. And then if I set a breakpoint now, it's actually going to go to the right one. It still usually does go to the right one. It just looks really weird. Okay, I'm going to click add blog. I'm going to see what happens. Here's our data. So we have data and we have our create blog. And so it's under create blog name that we're looking for. And that's our entire data coming back. So data create blog. Awesome. Let's jump in here a sec. So right now we have data dot. Oh, data has data. Sorry. That was confusing me for a minute. So we're actually looking for that. Let's put that back in. Jump back into VS Code. Let's plop that in here. Gotta love live coding. Makes me feel like a junior programmer all over again. Which I am. Sorry. Okay. So top left, we're gonna try this again. Let's let it go. Code should be all updated. Click and add blog. I hit my breakpoint. Things are looking better. Oof, denied. That is because, can anyone call it? Give the crowd a second here. I know I'm probably on a time delay. Okay, time's up. We are not actually using our state. So there it is. So the way that we have this currently, that PP, we would have to actually do a inner HTML call for that to remove some of that, but we're not going to worry about that for this example. Oops. So that is kind of the basic parts of getting a call out to create a blog. Now what we want to do, there's a couple things that we can take a look at. And the first thing that I'd really like to take a look at is, let me just check my time here. The first thing that I want to do is take a look at using a get call to set up our initial state so that we can pull that data in. So one of the easiest ways to do that is just with another hook. So we're going to use the use effect hook. And when that sets up, we essentially want a similar call to this API call. And I'm going to go a little off script here. So, well, not that I have a script, but I'm not going to follow along with AWS's documentation here. But we're going to jump into our queries, and get blog is probably where your head's like, yeah, we need that. But because, and actually, let me show you the data because I don't want this to be too confusing for new people. So the data that we just created and it brought up the blog, it's actually still in the database. So I want to show you that real quick. So if I look at our blog table, I'm going to jump into the database. Interesting. So that's kind of a fun one. I don't know what's going on there. Might have to ping our AWS friends and see why that's not working. or our Amplify friends, I should say. So what we're looking for is this Dynamo database. And within here, there's items and indexes. Some of this has changed around a little bit, but here is our data. So we could actually say, okay, let's go ahead and use one of these IDs as our blog. But what might be more beneficial, and this is somewhat, I hope, showing a little bit of the power of AppSync. What I'd like to do is just say, let's do list blogs. But we're also going to do a try to order these and see if it works. I have a feeling we might have to create a secondary index to get this to work. Okay, let's try it out. So back over in our code, we are going to sit in our use effect, and we essentially need to say, all right, we need to call this list blogs. So let's go ahead and do another await API, GraphQL. This all looks great. What we don't need to do though is provide an input. So we're just going to do list blogs. So I should say before I get too far here, you're like, man, is your API open? And no, it's actually using a key, which again, like I said, people are probably grabbing already. But if I go back into this AWS config, my API key is actually sitting right here. Okay. So I just want to make that well known. We might run out of time today, but right now we're basically just running as if it were a React app. What I want to get to is how to create this as a static page. So if we don't get to it today, we might have to jump into it next time. Okay, where was that? So list blogs. Let's go ahead and do GraphQL, blah, blah, blah. We don't need this. We're going to await that. We're going to bring it back again just into data. That does get a little confusing and redundant. Maybe instead of this, we'll call it return or call. How about, I don't know, something like that. There's our call, and when that call comes back, what we're gonna get is an array. And what we can do on the front end side of this. So if we do call, let's just check this out once. Let's do console log call and take a look at it. So you kind of see here. Oh, that's right. You can't do awaits in a use effect. So let's create a new function. You know what? Let's not do that. Let's just take the await out. Take that out. Let's just do it then. It's simple. All right, let's see if this works. So it's compiling, compiled successfully. So let's jump back over and see. Ooh, man, I missed TypeScript and linting. If there's any JS folks out there and I'm just doing this wrong and some linting would solve all my problems, let me know. I'm usually spending time in TypeScript land, and it, yes, I do use linting there too, but maybe I just that's the answer. I just need to get that set up. So it looks like we have a input issue. I'm going to change that out. So where it has this, it's checking for an input. We're just going to do it on page load. So that's taking in an empty array at that point. So let's see what else we have. Okay, list blogs. I didn't import that either. Whoops. Cool. Not exported from Mutations. That's because I stuck in the wrong place. So you guys probably want to see what I'm doing. So it doesn't come out of Mutations because it's in queries. So let's do queries. And then, oops, list blogs. Okay, cool. So at this point, it's not failing anymore on the React side. If I go to my bottom left screen where the console can be seen, let's see what it spit out. Here's my data list blogs. Here's some items. And so here's the point where you could say, well, we should really sort these created ads on the front end, right? Well, something that is interesting when you start to get into Dynamo, this you could do in Firebase. You just do order by, and unless I just don't know AppSync very well yet, I forget that with linting. Yeah, thank you, Brittany. So unless where was I headed? Where's my brain headed? Oh, yes. So unless I'm just total novice, which I might be to AppSync still, I think the way that this is structured, you actually can't make a call using an order by yet, because let's take a look at our schema again. So if I come out here and I go into our backend API schema, so you notice this blog is actually set up. It probably realistically, it should just be a single type of key. We shouldn't be making more than one, but who knows? Maybe you have revisions or versioning or something else that you want on here instead. And so typically with AppSync, you can use filtering and you should be able to use ordering, but I don't know that we can in this instance. So I'm going to try to find it really quickly, unless someone knows and wants to post in the comments. I'm going to find a way to do filtering using the GraphQL command. So let's look up. So let's try this out. So I don't know if this would work or not. I cannot understand why it's not working. If you got an error, order by on field has an invalid value. Cool. So I think if I go to this query variables, that's not where it's at. Might have to look at someone else's code. I can't remember. There's filter and there's limit, and I don't think filter is going to be what we need. So I believe my head's telling me that we should be setting up either a secondary index on this or some sort of global secondary index, which is about the same thing. Not true. It's not the same thing, but let's jump over. Let's jump back into our console and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So over here, we have this table. And at this point, you know what? Yeah, I'll go down this road and then we might back up a little bit. So we have this blog table. And if we take a look at it, which it might not go to the correct spot again. So let's go here. Okay, we have this blog table out here. And if I go to indexes, there's no global secondary indexes. And if I go just, did they move this? Where is this now? I know the screen's changed and it keeps throwing me off for no good reason, really. There's items, there's the indexes. There used to just be table information. Oh, it's right there in front of me. I can't see it. Okay. So right here, you have a partition key and a sort key. And currently, we are not doing anything with this sort key, which would normally, like, if you put items and then we said, oh, yeah, we want items sorted by this updated at field, that would become our secondary index. The other thing that does when we describe that on our schema over here is it's actually going to create that secondary key for us. The difficult part when you're doing this, though, is some of that hidden stuff in Amplify. So if we take a look over here on that, what we're going to see is that this type blog, when that got created, let's take a look at our build folder again. So in our build folder, we actually have this CloudFormation template, essentially. And this describes all of the different like GraphQL and Dynamo references and all of that fun stuff. What I'm looking for is this blog stack, though. And that blog stack is the definition for my blog table. And when I'm out there looking at it, here's blog table. So it's appending that unique key and things like that. But it's the key in here is set right here. Oop, yeah, am I on the right screen? Yes. Okay. So the key in here, it just has a hash ID. So there's no secondary key defined or anything like that. So that's how that table got created. Now the other piece to this in the resolvers. So one of the tricky parts, if you're just getting started with Amplify, is you're like, why does that matter? Like, why is Dynamo so separated from AppSync? Well, you have to think about AppSync being like a middleware to Dynamo. Dynamo, you could think of it as existing because it does exist completely separate from AppSync. You can use Dynamo just with a API, a RESTful API, API gateway out on AWS all by itself, or just for anything in general. So it's not the same as Amplify. So don't think of like Amplify being the things underneath. You have to think of AppSync and Dynamo are separate products, and they're both being used together to deliver us data. So I hope that like makes a little bit of sense. What I want to look at next is the resolvers for this. So let me clear some things off and close some things. If I take resolvers and I look at the request side, so this is blog posts request. Actually, let me jump back once. I just want to show you how we created blog first. So here is our actual initial request that we just sent through to create these blogs. Amplify is creating all of these different VTL files, and VTL is like a separate language outside. Language is probably a strong word, but it's a definition file for everything that's going to happen through AppSync. So when it comes in here, it's actually doing some things for us, and one of those things that we're looking at is this updated app. Because if we go back, you'll notice in our definition of our schema, we don't have an updated app, but yeah, our table has it, and we're getting it back in our feeds. Excuse me. I'm gonna take a quick drink here. Looks like I missed some messages. Let's see here. I have a meeting. Sorry. Oh, thanks. Brett said you do live coding well. I really appreciate that. It's not a good, or it's not an easy skill. Cool. All right. So just continuing forward here. So the other piece to this, when we define this, we didn't create any of these things, but you'll see that in these resolvers, they're actually creating these things for us. So there's a few things that are in here already. So this ID created at, updated at. They're also checking for things too, like if you're missing that ID. So it's double checking on if ID's in there. And then let's see what I'd love to get to on the other one. So this is the request. The result is usually just JSON. Yep. So here's a utility to JSON, or an error if an error occurred, just some formatting stuff. So every time you have a resolver in AppSync, you have a request and a result coming back out of it. So if I take the resolver for, I'm looking for query list. Here's a list. All right, so here's query list blogs. And the interesting part about this list blogs is all of the things, again, that it's doing. One of the biggest parts that becomes interesting to us, and what we're struggling with right now, is this model query expression. What it's looking up is to see if there is the operation is definitely there, but this query part. And so there's two types of ways to look at operations in DynamoDB. And this throws people off quite a bit. When we talk about like sort direction, the sort direction here is saying, oh, okay, you want it sorted? We'll do a scan, right? And you won't see anything else but a scan in this setup. And that's because it understands the fact we don't have a secondary key and we don't have a GSI in play here. So it's not going to actually do a query. And so what you need to be careful about, or not careful about, but just know about, let's go back over to Dynamo. If we do, I think they moved this, so it's in this explore items now. Yeah. Okay. So if I'm doing a scan on this table and you're searching, this is what a scan looks like. It's everything in this table. So if I run that, that's what it looks like. And actually, I'm gonna click add blog a bunch more times because I want to show you guys a decent set of data that comes through here. So let's imagine this thing has, you just set up and white labeled your most amazing like next Facebook thing. And so every blog is a user and they have their own blogs. So you have like 10,000 of these things and they're all in this DynamoDB table. If I can find it. There we go. So let me refresh this one more time. So now I'm returning back a lot of different blogs, and I want one that has like a created at, that's in the top, but let's try just randomly this one. So when I go to scan this one, this is just using a filter, and when you put in the attribute name created at, and it equals this thing, and we run it, it's still pretty fast. I was hoping it would slow down a little bit more. That's one benefit. DynamoDB is amazingly fast. But yeah, just imagine if I had 10,000 records. What's happening here in this scan is it's actually going through your entire database, and it's trying to read for that specific string, and it doesn't have any indexing to like hit that corrected field. So the only true index that you could ever hit and actually, I don't even know if you can on a scan, to be honest. I think on a direct get, it would use this ID field. But what we're looking to do is more like a query. And that query will give you a specific ID like this. So you can actually take and drive to that ID. Now, if we want like a sort based on our created at instead, though, we would need to set that up correctly. So one of the again, I don't know if it's a complaint or just, we want new features, and maybe there's a way to do it now. It's been a good year since I've set up some of these tables for a different project I was working on. One of those hardships is trying to figure out, do I put updated at now over in, get on the right screen, do I put updated at in my schema now? Because that really doesn't feel right to me. Like if the actual resolver is creating that already, why should I have to do that? And so that's part of that problem. And one way we can somewhat work around that is if you create a secondary index on this blog, um, you can actually then utilize that GSI to drive to the data. So I think I've been live coding and yammering on for over an hour now. I think I might pause here, and then we'll pick it up next time and start to build our own static site tables out of this Amplify setup. So I think, it's kind of fun to keep going with this example that we have out here. So what I'll do is I'll release a GitHub repo and I'll post that in the comments as we keep going. So thank you so much for watching this time. This is a codingcat.dev production, live coding, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much.